think we can get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MICCAI Student Board Webinar Series panel discussion on writing the paper for MICCAI conference. Today, we are lucky to have our panelists, Professor Fu Yongxin, Professor Angelisa Villers-Revorsal, and Kushal Vilas with us. Before we have the panel discussion, let me briefly introduce the MICCAI Student Board. The MICCAI Student Board is a student initiative since 2010. It's to stimulate the involvement of students to enhance student networking in the community and advise the MICCAI Board on matters related to students. So this is the MICCAI Board, Student Board members for this year. I'm Wei Najing. I will be the moderator for this webinar. I'm the webinar officer for MICCAI Student Board. So in the board, we have hold different activities throughout the year and in the MICCAI conference. So in the conference, we have the Emerge workshop and academia industrial event and some social and sports events. We also have the webinar events throughout the year. So if you want to keep an eye on the MICCAI Student Board activities, please follow us on the social media and never miss an update. So without further ado, I would like to open this panel discussion. And this is the schedule for today. We will mainly have the panel discussion for about 35 minutes on topics such as what makes a good research paper, what is a bad paper, and how to raise ratings through rebuttal. And then we open the floor for the Q&A from the audience. So please leave your questions throughout the panel discussion in the Q&A box in the Zoom chat, in the Zoom panel. And we will answer those questions after the panel discussion. So let me first introduce all the panelists first. The first panelist, Professor Angelisa Villers-Revorsal, is an assistant professor at the Young Mathematical Science Center, Tsinghua University. Previously, she was senior research associate at the Department of Applied Mathematics and Theoretical Physics, University of Cambridge. Her research lies at the intersection of applied mathematics and machine learning, focusing on developing data-driven algorithmic techniques that enable computers to extract high-level understanding from vast data sets. Recognitions include an Outstanding Paper Award, ICML 2020, and elected officer for the CMS 2022. She's also a member of the organizing committee for MICCAI 26 and is the general co-chair for MSB 26. So welcome, Professor Angelisa Villers-Revorsal. Thank you very much for joining us.
And thank you for having me here. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Professor Fu Yongxin. Professor Fu Yongxin is an associate professor in the Department of Biostatistics and Informatics at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus. He received his PhD in electronic and computer engineering at the University of Florida. His research focused on machine deep learning for healthcare, particularly medical image computing and image informatics. He has published over 80 peer-reviewed articles, including MICCAI, and has received multiple NIH grants as a PI. So welcome, Professor Fu Yongxin.
Thank you, Wina. Thank you for having me, and it's my pleasure to have the panel with Angela and Kusha today. Thank you.
Okay. So Professor Fu Yongxin and Professor Angelisa were as outstanding AC area chair for the MICCAI 2025. Okay, so for the next panelist is Kushal Vilas. He is a PhD student at the Rice University working on novel machine learning method and data representations for medical and scientific imaging, alongside research in machine learning for large signals. His work includes implicit neural representation of signals, and he has recently awarded the MICCAI Best Paper Award for developing neural fields that jointly enable signal representation and segmentation. Prior to his PhD, he He worked at the Samsung Research America on machine learning and computational photography and earned his master's degree from the CMU. He has also multiple papers on top-tier venues and is an inventor of several patents. So welcome, Kusha, to our panel discussion.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's truly a pleasure to be a part of this panel.
Okay. So I think we can begin our panel discussion on how to write a MICCAI paper. So maybe we can start from the beginning of formalizing a paper. So I'm wondering, when you're just starting a research project, how would you select the topic to work on for a paper, and how would you identify the research gap?
Maybe I can start.
Yeah, that's sure. Go ahead.
So I think in my research periods, most of the time usually we already have the project, and such as that we have the project with from our collaborator, or we have our own grant, and based on because if once you have the project, then you have the topics, right? And then you will know what topic you are working on, and with that we will do the research to see that is there any method we can apply to here and identify whether the method can work or not, or it will fail. And another thing I would like to probably mention is that probably when we have the project, we usually will talk to the clinicians or the biomedical investigators to identify the real bottleneck in the clinical setting environment. So I think that's also a important point. One can still do work on the real project.
On the research paper. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
And just to add on to what the panelists already said, sometimes technology from other fields is very useful. For example, in medical imaging, like implicit neural representations, which is my area of research, is very well studied in the field of computer graphics. And extending that to like a space like medical imaging, which often has large signals or high dimensional data, is something which is also like a exploration of a technology in a new field. And that was like one of our thought processes behind our paper.
Cool. Yeah, also draw knowledge from the prior experience or other fields. Yeah, I guess those are all helpful tips for especially the young researchers or like new students coming to this field. Okay, and regarding some practical questions, I'm wondering how do you organize your timelines to work on a MICCAI submission? Usually around earlier this year, like in a month, in February. So how would you organize your writing experiment, like maybe before the timeline? I think that's a very useful practical suggestions maybe for people who are working on the MICCAI submission right now. Thank you for sharing your experience working with these people. Yeah, it's great.
I can add some maybe more information to Angelica's comment. So you are asking regarding the timeline. Probably saying that usually if my group working on the MICCAI submission, usually they will have the key idea implemented usually is 2 or 3 months before the submission deadline, and implement the idea and then get some preliminary results and see if it works. If it is, then I think we can move to the next step. And then usually we'll get the writing. We'll start the writing if we have some good preliminary results. And I think this will align with the Angelica's comments a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that's a very helpful tip for like the students, how to organize their time, especially working to the deadline. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So maybe we can follow from the previous discussion, like Professor Angelica said, the writing is a way to organize your thinking, your ideas. So I'm wondering what experience can you share, how the ways you iterate and refine your writing, because we know we need to finalize our ideas, our method, algorithm into a paper. So how would you, practical tips would you want to share to refine your paper?
Maybe I can start.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so regarding writing the paper, usually probably I will list some kind of the bullet points for each paragraph or maybe each subsection. What kind of I want to write on the paper, and then I will based on the bullet point I will just to complete the draft. Probably in the first round, probably I don't you don't need really pay attention to the length of the paper. We know that MICCAI have only 8 pages, right? But maybe in the first draft we don't need to pay attention to that. Just write as the complete draft, and then maybe later on you will refine them, such as check whether you have any missing definition of some variable or may have some kind of overclamming problem. Then you can always polish your paper right after you have get the first draft.
Yeah, I like the ideas for sort of pull all your ideas out and maybe in a concise bullet point format and then refine your writing. Yeah. Cool. Is there any other tips?
And
or
a
questions?
quick
Yeah.
follow-up, or this is like a trick which I use in my writing, is generally like, for example, Microsoft Word has a feature where it can recite what you have written, and hearing your own writing often will convey how well a reader would understand it, or even the tone of your writing, whether or not it's exciting or it's conveying the research in the way you want it to be conveyed. So text to speech is actually a great tool to like speeden up the process on how you want to write. Just hearing what you write gives you a lot of idea on how a reader would perceive it.
Cool. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing your experience. Okay. Really like helpful reminder. You need a fresh eye on your paper, maybe from your peers, from your supervisor, to look at anything I'm missing, the blind spot in my writing. Yeah, that's good. Great advice. And maybe we can talk about some specific part about writing tips or experience for each section of the MICCAI paper, like how you draft the introduction, the method, and results. Is there any more tips, experience you want to share with us for drafting a good research paper? Maybe we can start from the introduction, the motivation, the contribution parts.
Okay, maybe I can start to maybe give some comment here. So usually for the introduction, probably a straightforward way is that to start with some kind of the background or maybe the clinical background or maybe the impact of the project, and clearly to describe the bottleneck or the problem, right? So, and then you probably also want to summarize or in a high level saying that uh, why maybe some the existing methods fail, and then what's your own contribution, right? Very clearly. I think this just probably this is kind of the general template that people using. I see.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned like some weakness, the weak spots we can want to overcome those like research gaps. Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, to echo the same thing, like introduction is generally easier to write, at least for me, once the entire paper is written, because then you have the exact angle with which you want to motivate your method and get the reader to be comfortable with what your entire paper is about.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of the outline of your whole story, the whole idea you want to summarize. Yeah. And maybe let's talk about the meat of the paper, the method part. Do you have any advice you want to share? Maybe how share with your student? Maybe share some of the advice here. Yeah.
Probably for the method section, probably I have probably one good way is that to provide some kind of workflow figure to summarize how your method works. I think I do see a lot of MICCAI people using this kind of strategy. I think that's pretty good because at least when the reviewer or maybe the readers first time to get read the paper. Usually they will focus on probably the title and abstract and then the figure. I think this is if you give a very clear figure and then is to summarize in a high level how your method works, and then I think it's very helpful. Probably I will add maybe two minor thing for the result section. So if possible, using the vector graphics, if you would show the figure, otherwise, vector graph is very I think it's whenever how they zoom in as well, I think they don't lose the resolution. This is a very minor comment. And another one is that in addition to list the result in the table or maybe show the figures, probably it would be helpful that to give maybe some kind of the short discussion or interpretation of the results instead only to just list a number of values there in a result section.
Okay. So to highlight your results, maybe have more discussion, relevant discussion to the results, and using the vector, graphic vector to ensure.
If possible, because probably maybe some figure cannot be use the vector graphics.
Yeah, exactly, like the medical image part. Yeah.
And just to add to that, while you're running experiments, it helps to save every intermediate variable as results, because when you actually write the result section, and sometimes you want additional information, it's usually just easier to like open the dump file that had every variable and just use that instead of having to rerun all baselines and experiments again to just add a new column.
Yeah. So also keep good log of your experiments in case you need any data. Yeah. Cool. I guess maybe we can already discuss like a general idea how to draft your paper. Maybe we can move on to discuss what is a bad papers to give us some idea. Like, can you briefly share an example or characteristic of what consider a bad paper? You are like an AC or reviewer, you have to see lots of those the submissions. So is there anything we need to avoid?
Okay, maybe I will start. So I served the AC for quite a few years, and then I do see that the paper or the summation get a very low score is rely on, I think most of it is one of them in probably in quite a few area. The first one is that the motivation is not very clear. So whenever you run the paper, I think when you talk about introduction, right, and some submission that does not clearly explain why they need to do this study or why they propose this method. Just don't know why. And the second thing is about the contribution. I think Angelica already mentioned that. Make sure that whatever you claim, the contribution in the methods section or the introduction section, you must have the experiment to support the claim, support the contribution. So make sure that your contribution is well justified by your experiments. I think this is another some kind of the probably paper submission that get a very low score. And the final one is that the don't have enough or insufficient experiments, saying that the paper claim that they propose some kind of method, but they don't compare some kind of the maybe recent of the other method, just maybe only or maybe compare only one or two very old method. I think this is some kind of the I do see that in the submission. This if we have the paper have discovered one or maybe more than one of discovered three problem, I will see that the score is some kind of low.
That's really important thing to keep in mind when drafting your paper. Yeah. I think the writing paper is just a way to persuade your potential audience or readers about why it works. So you need to show solid example or evidence of it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so maybe we can talk about something about the ineffective writing. So have you personally experienced or see a particularly ineffective writing, and maybe in your review or as a AC? So if yes, what made it ineffective? Any other comments from other panelists?
I agree with the Angelica. So maybe something additional information. So for this kind, if it's for this kind of the effective writing, I do see some paper that when they present their method, I find that some of them write very, very long sentence and a very long paragraph to try to explain the method, but they don't try to use the figure to visualize the idea. I think that will be much helpful if you, in the method section, if you have discovered thing, you want to visualize them, instead of using write a lot of sentence and text there in a very long paragraph or maybe multi-paragraph to try to explain the idea. I think maybe consider using a figure to illustrate the idea or maybe the method. Maybe it will be save a lot of time.
Mm. So, Kusha, do you have any?
Actually, great points put forth. And I think one additional comment is I think how you present and discuss results conveys a big impact on the paper. Like sometimes the methodology is very clear, but result section could just be reporting of the numbers, and that doesn't convey what you want the reader to take away from your paper as to why your method is impactful or what assumptions really helped make your method like useful. And even like small things like an ablation study sometimes goes a long way.
Thanks, Kusha, for those helpful comments. I agree that maybe when you're writing, you're thinking not from your author's perspective, you're thinking from the reader's perspective. Why reader needs to read your paper? What can they get? What's evidence show to support those conclusions? So you need to think from the other side. Yeah. Cool. I'm wondering, maybe last question, is there any suggestion for maybe the junior researcher graduate students or the first time writing MICCAI papers? Do you have any advice for them or any tips to avoid those common mistakes?
Probably the advice on maybe tips is I think we already covered some of them in the previous discussion, such as that clearly state your motivation of the study and clearly describe why you design this method in this way, something like that. And also make sure that when you're writing, and then make sure that your experiments and also methods and they are aligned with each other. So make sure that whatever you made a claim or made a contribution, it must be supported by the experiments. I think we already covered that. And also maybe one other thing that for the beginners or maybe for the first time submission, do not assume that the reviewers have the same background as you. I think if you have this assumption, probably you will ignore maybe some definition of the terminology or maybe some definition of the mathematical notation, and then but actually maybe the reviewer don't have exactly the same background as you. If you are working in a very in a small sub area, right? That's very possible. The reviewer don't have the same background.
Thanks, Professor, for this great advice for the like the beginner or newcomers researchers. Any other advice or maybe your personal experience you want to teach your younger you about what to do? Yeah, Professor.
I was actually a first time submitter, so what really helped is going through a lot of MICCAI papers. Like we generally understanding the writing style or how figures are presented and what kind of nomenclature is used in a MICCAI paper. That really helped us write the paper we submitted.
Okay. Yeah, let's maybe look through the previous year's submissions, learn from this. Yeah, that's great. Then maybe next we can move some topics on the paper rebuttal. As a reviewer or AC editor, what makes a good rebuttal convincing enough for you to maybe reconsider your original reading? Yeah, could you share an example of a rebuttal in your experience that successfully improved your reading and what specifically worked well?
Okay, so maybe I'll start. So I think for the rebuttal, I think it's very important that to directly address the comments, just at the beginning. So don't try to explain a very long paragraph and then try to answer the question. Just at the beginning, directly address the comment and directly. And if you write very long paragraph or many more sentences there, maybe give the reviewer saying that you want to hide something, you want to ignore the major problem. Just if you do have discovered the issue, just admit it, and then show explain how do you address this limitation. I think this is probably the thing that I would like to highlight. And and for regard, you also asked about is there any experiments, right? Is there example? So one example that I do see in some previous submission when I served as a AC, and some review asked about the technical details of the proposed method in a certain submission, and the rebuttal directly just saying that, oh, so what is this? I think the rebuttal addressed by adding a very detailed explanation in the rebuttal for the component that the review asked. So, and also another example is about the technical novelty. Probably for some submission, they don't clearly to write out that what is the technical novelty in the manuscript. Then the reviewer is difficult for the reviewer to find out what's the technical novelty. And I think the review asked that, so you need to clarify what is the technical, and then in the rebuttal, the author restate the novelty using a bullet point, and then what is novelty and what is the difference between from any other existing methods. I think just to be straight, directly address the question. Don't try to explain a lot and then to try to ignore something or hide something.
Yeah, that's a great tips. Thank you, Professor Fu. Any other like maybe some maybe for the first time a writer, is there any common thing we would like to try in the rebuttal, but maybe not successfully or always typically fail to convince the reviewer or AC? Is there any other pitfalls to avoid?
For regarding this question, so probably will be aligned with the Angelica's just the comment couple minutes ago. So probably one of the common mistake that I saw that it's possible that a submission can receive a lot of the questions and a lot of comments, and then but the rebuttal have a limited number of the words, right? You cannot provide you. So basically, the rebuttal try to give an equal importance to each question, each comments, but this is usually probably is not the good way because you need to focus on the major concerns, and I think if you address the major concern in a rebuttal, probably you will instead of that try to address every comment and some of the very minor, but you still to saying that to give equal weight or equal importance to the major concerns. So I do see that this is one of the mistake that I saw and try to address everything, but they don't have the space. And then for the major comments, that they just to write a very few or one sentence to address them, try to address the major concerns. But this is not what the reviewers want. You probably want to address the major concerns very clearly.
Yeah, that's really important advice. Yeah, to keep in mind in the rebuttal. I guess. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a quick student perspective on this. What also helps is how you organize the reviews that you get. So generally, like organizing all reviews in a spreadsheet and linking which reviewers raised common points, that helps a lot in writing a refined and a short rebuttal. And that's also like, so you also have like a task list on what things need to be addressed, and having that spreadsheet generally helps.
That's a great idea, like having a spreadsheet listing. Yeah, that's great. Cool. I think we can move to the Q&A session to open floor and ask the audience to ask questions. We already have some questions. Yeah, maybe I can read them out one by one. So this audience said how to maintain a repo of our code neatly. I find that my code becomes very messy and it's difficult for me to look back at the results. So how to maintain a clear repo for code and experiment? Any suggestions on how to organize many experiments with different settings? Yeah.
Actually, I can talk on that.
Yeah.
So one using like how you organize your code really matters in sense like you can have one folder for Jupyter notebooks, one folder for internal like Python function calls or whatever is your core library for your project, one folder for like visualizations. And generally what I do is I have everything is a config file, so it's generally gets very messy if you write command line arguments to run a Python file. But if you have a config file, you can just keep creating new configuration files to run your entire code. And that, so even if you have a lot of changes being made, every config, so like Hydra is a very popular Python framework to follow that setup. So it helps you keep track of your code. And also like using things like GitHub, you can like keep a version history, so in case you make an edit and you want to roll back to a previous version, you can do that. So that's all. But generally, research code bases get very messy very fast. This is what I generally do.
Mhm. Thanks, Kusha. Is there any useful tools that you use in your workflow?
Mainly Git, VS Code, like there's like PyTorch and Hydra, which are very good extensions for each other.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think Hydra has a functionality where whenever you run your code, it will basically back up all your files and save it as a zip file. So every run that you make has results, code, everything saved in a zip file. And so whenever you want to rerun a previous like version of your code, you can just unpack the zip file and run the code from there.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Kusha, for sharing those practical experience. Maybe we can answer the next question. As the limitation of the paper is only 8, what would be the best way to write the state of the art?
I
Yeah,
assume that the state of the art here means that the related word section, right?
yeah,
Is it?
yeah.
Okay.
Really.
So I think probably the different author have a different opinions. But I do see that maybe a lot of people just too much the discover the step other section with the introduction section. Basically, when you're in the introduction, you want to talk about the background of the problem and maybe talk about the clinical impact, and then state the problem, right? And then you need to explain why the current existing method will fail, and then right, and you will lead to your own contribution. So basically, I do suggest it's quite a lot of people merge these two into a single introduction session because of the limited pages line of the MICCAI only 8 pages. So I do see a lot of people doing in this way.
Mhm. Yeah, maybe we can move to the next one. For comparison, is this important to apply in different data set or comparing with the other method is fine? I guess maybe it's depending on the specific method. Any comments for this question?
I guess it probably will depend on the problem you are working on. So maybe for some problem that is very difficult to get the data, especially for some kind of rare disease, it's not easy to get this kind of the real world data. So so the more common way is that the people using the data set and then compare the different recent step the other method in the data set. But if you do find some similar data set or maybe relevant data set, I think probably it will be recommended to do that because I probably the reviewer will prefer that if you whether your method can only apply to a certain type of data set or you can generalize to other data sets as well. So if you can run it on more than one data set, I think that will be a plus.
Thanks, Professor Fu. Okay, maybe another question is there any good software or website for making good workflow figure or as you said, vector graphics?
Probably this is a question for me. So for the vector graphics, I think whenever you generate the bar figure or curve figure, right? I think you can save it is a vector figure. For example, the EPS will be a vector graphic, I think. So if it's an EPS, then will be a vector graphics. And uh, is any software. I I do know there's some kind of software you can use, but but in the result section, most of the result will be generated by your code, I think. So if you use the whatever Python code or maybe other programming language, it should be able to directly allow you to save as the vector graph figures. And for the how you make a good workflow figure, I assume that the good workflow figure means that is there any software can make for you to easier to make this kind of figure, right? This is my understanding. So if I'm getting wrong, please let me know. So I think if we want to, I don't know the other members, maybe Angelica or maybe Kusha can comment later. So most of the time, my student using the PowerPoint slides to make the figure for the flowchart figure. I don't know what other people using.
Yeah, I also like we also use PowerPoint, but you can you have an option to export it at a very high DPI, and that gives you a very high quality figure.
Thanks for answering question. The next question, I work in a clinical setting and has developed multi-stage pipelines for 3D CT integrating deep learning segmentation, graphic-based array matching, and biomarker construction. Given MICCAI's focus on methodological innovation, how do reviewers view papers where the novelty lies in the technical integration of tools and large-scale validation number equals 750 rather than a brand new architecture? Do a strong clinical hypothesis backed by a technical engineering term make the successful criteria for the name track?
I believe this is an excellent question. If I remember correctly, MICCAI do have the clinical application check, I think. Right. In addition to the methodology check, I think the submission also have some another check called a clinical application check. So in that check, you don't need to show that you develop a new method, a new algorithm, or a new model. Probably you want to highlight that you solve a real clinical problem, and then you address the bottleneck or the pain point in the real application. I think that's the thing you want to highlight, and then you solve a real problem in the clinical setting.
Thanks for answering this. Yeah, maybe you can check the detail on different tracks and see which one suits you best. The next question, should our results always be better than the results of state-of-the-art methods?
Maybe I give a quick comment here. So it depends. So how to say that? So if you find that one of the maybe some of the state-of-the-art method, they rely on very powerful computing resource, and then it's very difficult for some common people or maybe the university lab can use, or maybe the method is the computational is extremely expensive. It cannot deploy to the real application. If that's the case, that you can probably you provide a method that alternative with that you can significantly reduce the computational cost, or maybe saying that you lower the requirement of the computing power. So probably I think there's also a contribution as well.
Thanks, Professor Fu. I believe maybe the criteria is not like just a single numeric value on the state of art, maybe other, because clinical problem is very complex. So if you have innovation in different aspects, I think it should be okay, as Professor Fu said. Okay, I think for the sake of time, we need to end this panel discussion. Thank you very much for the panelists, Professor Fu Yongxin, Professor Jenica Aviles Rivero, and Kusha with us for joining us and give your practical tips for submitting a successful MICCAI paper. And hope it will be helpful for our junior researchers and first-time submitters. And hopefully all the best with your research and have a good submission. Yeah, thank you very much for attending this session.
Thank you, everyone, and it's my pleasure to join the panel. And have a good night or good day. It depends on where you are.
Definitely. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for the event. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.